Hello. So, this week I'm speaking to Miguel Blacutt. So, Miguel has come in before. He is very, very intelligent. Me and Miguel always have fascinating conversations, whether we talk on air or off air. We had I think it was like an hour conversation before we recorded this podcast. We were just talking about personal stuff and these kind of things as well. So, it's always interesting speaking to Miguel. It's often just an exploration of thought out loud. Like, I never have to guide the conversations with him. It's really, honestly, he's one of my favorite people to talk to by far, in just every possible way, really. And we kind of dive into a variety of things. Hypertrophy as a mechanism for health, and then also is it futile to further the research of hypertrophy? You can probably get a pretty good idea from the title of this podcast. But yeah, if you guys did want to find Miguel, you can find him on Instagram if you search Miguel Blacutt. I think it's M Blacutt underscore. That's Blacutt. Mblacut. Or you can go to, I think that's actually the only place you can really find Miguel nowadays. But if you did want to follow Miguel, go and follow him. His Instagram will be in the show notes of this episode. And yeah, I'm extremely excited to speak to this lovely man again. He's going to be a serious weapon in fitness as time goes on. Like, he will compete with the people at the top. He kind of already does. So, and keep in mind, I believe Miguel is 23. That's 2 years older than me, something like that. He's 23 or 24. And he is just really, really smart. But I don't know if we talked about too much around his background in this episode. We kind of just got into it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and thank you very much for listening. Hey guys, welcome to the Hypertrophy Hub podcast. So I'm extremely excited to chat to my lovely friend Miguel again. We've just been talking for like an hour and a half, so we're already quite warmed up. So Miguel is the Chief Science Officer at Revive Stronger. Revive Stronger is quite a cool company. I think if you follow this podcast, you probably know who they are. I love Revive Stronger, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm a big fan for a variety of reasons. I think they do some fantastic work across the board. It's pretty cool stuff across the board. And I think Miguel is quite a unique individual. I've told him this off air and on air as well. It's like, very smart man. And I think what's cool is he's open to having unique conversations. And that's what I'd like to do today. I think we can have a variety of unique conversations. And there's something that in general, I think it's something that's troubled me for a while, or it's something that's struck with me for a while. A while ago, me and Miguel were hanging out in New York when I went to New York, and we had a fascinating conversation off air, but it was like long ass conversation, ridiculously deep, ridiculously intense. And it's a shame that it wasn't recorded almost, because it's these kind of things where I think we both internally struggled with these kind of issues. So Miguel, I think this would be a good place to start. One, welcome to the podcast, I guess. But in terms of hypertrophy, we've both sort of thought about this a lot. We talked about this a lot off air, but where do you sort of feel as though hypertrophy stands in terms of furthering the progress of the world from the perspective of health? Because I'm still trying to figure that out, and I'm unsure what utility hypertrophy has as one, like a mechanism for health, but also how futile is it to further the specific knowledge of how to achieve hypertrophy?
Right. So first of all, James, thank you very much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And I love getting to talk to you for like an hour and a half about the most random things that come to my mind. Both James and I can talk nonstop, so that's always lovely. By the way, when he came to New York, we got until like 5 a.m. because we could just nonstop, which was awesome. I tend to do that to everyone when it comes to New York. I just like bring them out until way too late. But to answer your question about how hypertrophy can be used as a mechanism of health, or just how it can advance kind of where we are throughout the world. I guess I should kind of give a background on like why I'm qualified to give this answer, just so people are like, this is a bodybuilder answering these things. I am a master's student at Columbia University, where I mainly focus my studies on neurodegeneration and computational neuroscience. I am also a research assistant at Yale Medical School. And this summer, I'm going to be going over to Oxford University to study a type of stem cell therapeutics that we think are going to be able to help people with muscular dystrophies and cancer cachexia, as well as sarcopenia. But anyways, so that's kind of like why James asked me to be on here to kind of talk about more health related things, and also James as a podiatrist and someone who has seen people with diabetes and with multiple cardiometabolic diseases is also qualified to speak about this. So hypertrophy is quite interesting. I think that one of the most interesting things about hypertrophy is how in the literature itself, we can look at things that where it's discussed how resistance training affects multiple disease outcomes, but the majority of the time, they are just talking about strength training. So I think it's something where it can kind of be a little bit of a misnomer that people are like, no, these are the things that are beneficial about strength training. Like we really don't have much research about hypertrophy. But when you get past that and when you just kind of like accept like strength training as part of hypertrophy, you can start to read literature and find really cool things about hypertrophy and the things that specifically resistance training can do for people. So for example, when it comes to diabetes, resistance training can help individuals by having better glycemic control. It can help people by just having a greater muscle cross-sectional area, which can help actually with insulin sensitivity. If we're talking about things like neurological diseases, it can the actual act of resistance training, strength training, and the hypertrophy that comes as a result of that can help people have more coordinated movements and have neuromuscular responses to movements that are beneficial. If we talk about obesity, having a little bit more muscle mass can help people to lose some weight, although it's debatable on how much more metabolically active muscular tissue is. And one of the coolest parts about hypertrophy that I've recently began to discuss with a professor here at Columbia is its application to depression and drug addiction. So there's a professor here at Columbia, his name is Joe Ciccolo, who does research on resistance training when it comes to depression and drug addiction. And I sat down with Dr. Ciccolo and I was having this conversation with him about why do you think that resistance training helps individuals who have depression and who have drug addiction? And he told me it's the only thing that you can do and see the results right away and feel better about yourself right away. So by that, he was talking about the pump. He was telling me that when we do some type of hypertrophy style training, when we do something and we get the pump, these people who have depression, who have drug addiction, come out of the lab and they're swollen, they're pumped up, they're feeling good. And that actually gives them some type of mental fortitude to go forward throughout the day. So I find it so fascinating how hypertrophy, strength training, and just the resistance training style that we do in general can help people with cardiometabolic diseases, people with obesity, and people who have depression or drug addiction. Like there are very few diseases that can't somehow be helped by hypertrophy and resistance training.
That's what I found. Like I find the arguments for it far and few between. Like I don't know if you read the article that I wrote, but it's like it's for me it seems like it's I try to not put it on a pedestal because I realized when I was talking to Brad Dieter about it, it was like I realized, okay, there's a variety of places that have things like diabetes, and there's a variety of ways to solve it, and it's a multifaceted problem, and it cannot just be solved by hypertrophy. But I think it's cool that, like as you mentioned, it's like hypertrophy as an adaptation, not as a process, but as an adaptation. I think as it in itself has its own benefits. It's like the act of exercise is cool. It's really cool. But I think hypertrophy as an adaptation is really, really cool. And it's like getting there is really, really cool because, okay, let's say I think there's not many situations where you have a better situation to do it because, okay, injury rates very, very low compared to pretty much any other exercise or activity. It's just ridiculously low. You compare it to running and it's like half. It's like really damn low injury rates. The ability it has on, for instance, arthritis, pain scores go down. I think range of motion goes up. Strength obviously goes up. It's like, it seems to be like this. For me, there seems to be far and few arguments. And so I can't see the argument as to not implement it as a mechanism for health. And one thing that I think is really cool is the relationship between volume and the health outcomes as well. It's like, that's where I think volume is a difficult topic within hypertrophy because I think it becomes, I think we put a lot of weight in volume where we shouldn't necessarily, but I think that's more on the education rather than the actual application. But I think it's cool to see the relationship between volume and the health outcomes related to hypertrophy. Like for instance, if someone's diabetic, would we rather do them have them do a higher intensity set or 2 lower intensity sets. It's probably 2 lower intensity. And I think that to me is fascinating. It's like but then I guess there's the whole bottleneck of how do you actually get people to do this? It's ridiculously difficult. It's incredibly hard. And it's cool to see those sort of topics that you brought up where it's like, okay, there's sarcopenia, there's diabetes. These are the ones that I understand relatively well. And then there's all these other disease states where it's just like, geez, it's useful. But then I guess the bottleneck of adherence just becomes such an issue, or it's so difficult to apply. And I guess maybe it's idealistic to apply it to a whole population. Like, do you personally, how much of a role do you think training for hypertrophy can have, like, in this whole thing? I guess maybe it's specific disease states or mainly a preventative mechanism. Because to me, it seems like it's mainly preventative. And like, for instance, if you get someone who already has type 2 diabetes and you get them exercising, it's pretty damn hard. Like, I've seen some shit when it comes to diabetes in patients. It's like, those people, for them to fucking stand up is difficult. It's like, it's very, very difficult. And like, diabetes and obesity are 2 separate things, but they're highly correlated. And like, obesity in itself will make it harder to resistance train. And it's like, and resistance training, I would argue, doesn't necessarily decrease obesity, but it probably does decrease like intra-abdominal sort of like the waist, basically waist circumference. And it feels as though it's very hard to implement, and that's sort of the bottleneck for all of this.
Right. I think that one of the ways in which we can help people to get more into hypertrophy, and one of the ways in which hypertrophy can be useful, is by, instead of seeing it as this like big bad intervention that people with, going to the gym, the people who might have obesity or diabetes have to go through, this like thing that's just a huge pain in the ass, we have to look at it through health-seeking behaviors. And this is something that Gabby Fundera and I just recently talked on Steve Hall's podcast about, is the fact that if someone has diabetes or obesity or has these various cardiometabolic factors, doctors right now, like, they say go to the gym with judgment and kind of with implications of this is going to cause you to lose weight. And the reason that you should go to the gym is to lose weight. But if we take a step back and we look at the literature done on like health-seeking behaviors and weight-neutral approaches, so this is research that is done on people who have obesity or who have cardiometabolic diseases that are most likely related to their weight. And doctors take a step back, and instead of prescribing them a weight loss focused intervention, like the intervention being, okay, well, you are going to eat 500 less calories a day, and compare that to people who their intervention is rather, okay, let's just eat a few more vegetables, go to the gym, let's have positive self-thoughts today, like all these things, but at a deeper level, like right now I'm scratching the surface level a bit. We see that the individuals who have a weight-neutral approach have the same improvements in cardiometabolic factors. We see the same improvements in lipid levels, in glycemic control, in reduction for a risk of progressing their diabetes. So I think that a cool place where hypertrophy and specifically like resistance training helps individuals like this is to give them a health-seeking behavior that kind of places them in a very good spot to pursue other health-seeking behaviors. Because as this professor said, and as we all know, as soon as you're done in the gym, you feel good about yourself. You feel good about your day. Like it puts you in a position to kick the rest of the day in its ass. So let's say that we have someone who might have obesity or diabetes or whatever else. They go to the gym, and you know what? Maybe the gym isn't going to solve it. Like maybe just because they grew their quads by like 5% doesn't mean that they're going to all of a sudden be cured of obesity and diabetes, and all of a sudden they're going to become the perfect human. But maybe that means that, okay, well, they did one cool thing at the gym now. So now they're going to go home and they're going to have, let's say, just a protein shake, or they're going to have chicken and veggies rather than going through the McDonald's line. So I think that resistance training in and out of itself, no, it's not going to help to cure these diseases, and it's not going to help to really cure any disease, but it's going to improve outcomes, and it's going to put people on a path where they can improve their outcomes. Or like, if we're talking about non-obesity or non-weight related diseases, like let's say like Huntington's disease or things like that, resistance training isn't going to cure it, but you know what? It's going to improve their gait. It's going to give more functionality. It's going to give them more neuromuscular control. So I think that hypertrophy and resistance training and strength training and all these things just kind of in general can help people be on a better path with their disease, regardless of what that disease may be. Again, there are some diseases in which hypertrophy or strength training or resistance training might not be useful, but for the majority of cases, for the vast majority of cases, going to the gym and getting some iron up there is going to help you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think it seems highly true to me. It's like I like also the mention of sort of the health at every size movement, because it's sort of, I think people sort of see that at odds with this sort of like seeking hypertrophy or seeking body composition changes. It's like, no, it's like it's not. Those health seeking behaviors. It's like, if you're obese and it's so difficult to lose weight. It's so ridiculously hard. Like, we live in an obesogenic environment. It's like the ability for someone to do that is incredibly hard. So like, okay, you at some point you may lose the weight, but say if you never do, what's the best thing say if for some reason it was literally impossible to lose the weight, what would be the best thing to do? Try and, yeah, as you said, be healthy at that size. It's like, I don't know. I don't see why people. I think it's incredibly important to promote that. It's like, that is extremely useful.
Right. And as someone who is passionate about this area, you probably know that, this weight focused approach is very disheartening for people.
Yes.
Like, people have this idea in their mind that, okay, well, if I can't lose weight, I might as well not try.
Yeah. Well, it's like it does nothing. It's like,
it's like,
it's not the case.
doctors will say all you have to do is lose weight, but like, they don't explain to them that there are all these other factors that are conducive to a very healthy lifestyle that if you do, maybe we can maximize how much health you can get out of your situation. Like,
exactly.
Maybe we can pretty much get to the same level as if you had lost weight if all we do is improve your healthy behaviors. So this would be things like sleeping enough, eating sufficient vegetables and protein, having low stress, having positive self-thoughts and psychological flexibility. So having the ability to think about yourself without judgment and without thinking that you are a bad person. Resistance training, aerobic training. Like, if we do all of these things, we are most likely going to be able to see a very, very large improvement in health. Now, if someone weighs like 600 pounds, we can't deny the fact that their weight is putting them, is negatively impacting their health. We can't deny that. That would be science denialism. But we can say, okay, well, what's the next best thing? Let's get you involved in all of these things. And the cool thing about preaching health-seeking behaviors rather than preaching weight loss itself is that then people, as a result of this, might lose weight, but it won't be the focus of, I need to lose weight, and if I lose weight, I'm a failure. And I think that, sorry, what were you going to say?
I think that the goal of, if it becomes the goal is to make the scale decrease, that's where those sort of negative behaviors start to arise. It's like, you look at Break Binge Eating's account. It's like, you look at everything they post about it. It's like the rates of binge eating and the rates of eating disorders are just ridiculously high. It's like, and that directly feeds obesity. It's like, okay, it's I don't know, just lose weight is like, that's so overly simplistic. It's like, I don't think, like, if a doctor just says, okay, just lose weight, it's like, if you don't give them some other resources, it's crazy. It's like, just ridiculous.
Exactly. And I think that strength training, hypertrophy, is a very cool way for people to have one of the most powerful things that can put them on a path to seek healthy behaviors.
Yeah. And like, for instance, if we just look at diabetes, it's like, I think it's the most obvious one, or that and sarcopenia. It's like the most obvious, like almost curing mechanisms, like not quite, but it's like massive parts. Like, you look at the research, all these papers I've got on my desk, all of them are to do with basically preventative diabetes as a mechanism, or hypertrophy or resistance training as a mechanism to reduce the likelihood of diabetes, basically. And it's like, it's ridiculously like important. It's like the rate at which someone who's pre-diabetic will not go to type 2 diabetic if they are resistance training is like, it's just a ridiculously high drop in occurrence. And it's just like, wow, it's like the most obvious thing. It's like, to me, it's just crazy. Like, it seems like the most beautiful mechanism ever. And I don't know. I wish it was like, okay, let's say from this point of view, how, if someone was a personal trainer with someone with some of these diseases, some of these disease states, how do you feel as though they should go forward applying resistance training? What sort of practical ways would you say they should go ahead and program for individuals like this? For instance, I think a relatively good bet would be generally more volume, generally lower intensity, but I'm not quite sure. I don't know. Exercise selection is probably quite important as well.
Right. I think that first of all, we need to figure out like how to keep people in the gym. That's a big question that we have. And there was a really interesting paper released, I believe it was November, and I forget the authors. And essentially what they were looking at is the amount of muscle damage as a predictor to whether people kept training or not. Mm-hmm. And they found a strong inverse relationship. And essentially what the authors were trying to show here is that right now it's kind of common practice where like a client will join a gym and then a personal trainer, like thinking they're a badass, we'll just fuck them up. We'll just like give them a program that's it's very difficult. It's probably not tailored in any way, shape, or form. They're probably gonna put them on the leg press until they die. And just kind of, be like, oh, like, yeah, I worked out this person so hard. Like, I'm such a good trainer. Like, I put them through the workout of their life. But it was shown that when people do this and when they induce a large amount of muscle damage, people don't come back to the gym. Yeah. Because imagine that you have been overweight your entire life, or you have obesity. You're already hesitant about going to the gym. Yes. You feel ashamed. You feel guilty. You feel like you don't belong. A personal trainer kicks your ass, and then the next day you can't walk. Or like you can't lift the twice. You're like, this is horrible. Why would I keep going?
Yeah, it's terrible during and it's terrible after.
Yeah, and keep in mind that you have the knowledge that this is going to go away. They do not. They've never done this before. Yeah. Like we know, like for example, like 2 months ago, I didn't train for like a month and a half because I was so freaking busy with school that I was just basically dying in a sea of papers and research and statistical analyses. Yeah. I'm glad I survived, by the way. But I knew, okay, when I go back into the gym, this is going to be terrible. It's going to hurt, especially after leg day. But you know what? It's going to go away. But it's because I have the prior knowledge to weigh that. They don't know that it's going to go away and assume they're not going to get any soreness whatsoever. So I think that the first thing that we need to consider is that trainers need to implement these movements in a way where they're not going to cause people to get overly sore. Yes. And I think that it's one of those things where you need to have enough confidence in yourself as a trainer to give people a workout that won't kick their ass because you know that it's going to make them better. And I think that this gets into training psychology a lot and coaching psychology a lot. Because it's something that, for example, James, you probably know of, like when you send your client their second mesocycle and they're like, why is this all the same? Like, why aren't I doing like jumping jack squats while lighting a flaming tiki torch? And you're like, because the boring stuff is what builds muscle, you know, like
novelty is like so not useful.
Exactly. Well, like people want something super exciting and whatever, but at the end of the day, it's not what's going to get them the best results. As a coach, if you guys are coaches, you know that tracking their calories and macros and maybe it's not sexy, but it's what works. If you design training programs for the people, you know that we can't just switch around every exercise every time in every rep range, because while that's exciting, it's not going to get them fuck all.
And I think a cool approach there is like, if you want them to have some kind of novelty, implement it in things like a different kind of lateral raise or a different kind of delt work or a different kind of bicep curl. It's like, those are all relatively similar patterns. It's pretty hard to like, something that's relatively not fatiguing. It's like something that they can't fuck themselves up too bad doing. Don't give them like fucking a different kind of squat just for a laugh. It's like variation's cool, but like if there's movements that they fucking work well on, like rinse that shit. Like get really fucking strong on those movements.
So similar to that, don't just try to get your client to do a whole bunch of crazy shit on their first day, or don't just push them on the first day, because it might be boring and maybe they'll be like, I don't know if this is working, but you know what? You're going to put them through something that they will enjoy that day. And then they'll keep coming back. And over time, you can push the volume and intensity. So I think first and foremost is just be confident in your skills as a trainer and take them through it slowly. Don't give them something where they're going to be miserable while you're doing it and then be miserable after, because we have plenty of research to show that they will not keep coming back. Why would they? you probably embarrass them in the gym by showing them how weak they are. And then they probably felt like shit afterwards because they were so sore. So I think that trainers who are getting people who are coaching for who are undergoing resistance training for the first time, you can be compassionate during the training and watch out for their clients.
Yes.
And give them a training day or the first couple of weeks where you are really just introducing them to the movements, making sure they can do them properly, and making sure that they're not getting too sore afterwards. I have a very good friend, Miranda Card, who I told James about now, who her big focus and one of the things that she's really interested in is in the effective response to training and how that can predict whether people stick to training. So that being like, how do you feel emotionally after training, and what can we do to regulate these things to keep people in the gym? Like right now, we kind of have this idea of a personal trainer as someone who just like yells at you and just, makes you feel like shit and it's just like super mean, but like you keep coming back because you're basically Rocky. And the reality is that people aren't like that. Like people who have diabetes or obesity and are getting into the gym don't respond well to feeling crappy after training. Like maybe you did after your football sessions or after your soccer sessions where like the coach just kind of yelled at you for being, an insignificant human being, and that, that kind of got some like barbaric need out of you because it like I played football, essentially coaches would just kind of yell atrocities at you and you'd be like, okay, now I'm pumped up. But it doesn't work like that with people who have obesity and diabetes and
they're
who are
scared in the first place.
So.
It's like the gym's a frightening environment if you don't feel comfortable in it. When I go to gyms that I've never been to before, sometimes I feel nervous to like act as though I do in my normal gym because I normally act as though I look like I know what I'm doing. And then I'm scared of that judgment. And it's like, I run a fucking podcast about hypertrophy. I coach people for fucking hypertrophy. All I do is think about bloody hypertrophy. And it's like, I'll talk to people and I'll be like, oh, I don't want to sound like an overconfident dickhead. It's like, it's very easy to feel intimidated by the gym by itself. And then the fucking training, if you don't feel like you're strong, if you don't see that you're going to progress over time, like I think it's really important as a trainer to be like, hey, like this is like the setup cost period. Like that's important. Like I had to explain to one of my clients a while ago, it was like, we had a really fucking rough first mesocycle. It was just like, we were setting up a bunch of habits. There was a bunch of things we just needed to get rolling. Like, and the second meso went fucking well. It's like, because the first was like the setup cost. It's like a lot of the times I think that's the case. It's like you can still make progress in that time, but like the first 6 weeks, it's like, what are you really doing? Like you're getting rid of novelty. You're just making neuromuscular adaptations. Like you're not really making that much hypertrophy occur. It's like you're definitely going to have intramuscular swelling, but it's just like that first 6 weeks is like, well, those first few sessions, it's like, well, you need to make it clear. Like I'd say make it really clear to your clients. It's like, okay, this is the setup cost. This is not, it does get funner. Like novelty, soreness, etc. Like explain those things because it's important. Don't make them feel like it's a fucking war. Because I think when people go and do that, they go and fuck their clients up in the first session. It feels as though it is sometimes done from a position of now they need me because I'm the thing that makes them work out hard, rather than if you take it a little bit slow, you explain some more things to them rather than just going intense. It's like, then they get to learn. They get to be able to feel as though they could go into there and do it themselves. They could go and sit on a leg press and be a lot more safe and comfortable with it. And it's just like, that's fantastic compared to like, okay, they just maybe do a bunch of shit that made me sore. They didn't take the time to slow it down and explain it to me. Like if you decrease volume and intensity, you probably have more time within the session, say the session's 45 minutes, to explain shit. And it's like, you don't just explain the whole time. It's probably a balance. I mean, I've never personal trained in my life, so I'm purely speculating here. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's very crucial, I would say, to understand how much you should teach, how much, like, just decrease volume and intensity on the first session. Realize how slow you need to go into it. I take fucking volume intensity lower after a fucking deload. It's like, and there's good reason to believe that because novelty will increase. It's like, even if you've done the movement 2 fucking weeks ago, it's still a little bit more novel than it was 2 weeks ago. So it's just like, be careful with that, I would say. Yeah.
Right. No, you have to be incredibly careful with all of that and really just make sure that people are learning the movements and learning why they're doing it and becoming educated about it and make it an enjoyable process. That's like my main point here
Mm.
is that you cannot at any point make this something where you are being a drill sergeant or where you are being an asshole in any way, shape, or form. Like, don't show tough love to your newly trainees. That's not going to work. What we need to do is we need to make sure that they enjoy coming to the gym, that you have a good relationship with them. You know, you can be friendly with them. They enjoy their workouts and then they feel good afterwards, because that's what's going to keep them coming back. And I think that, you know, when we are talking about people with cardiometabolic diseases that are most likely related to weight, as James said, it's the biggest thing there is that people are just not adhering to it. So we have to ask ourselves, well, how can we do that? And it's by making people feel good, not by being a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, we have to just kind of really train that into ourselves and knowing that, okay, let's kind of take it easy with the volume and intensity right away, do things that might be a little bit more boring, maybe not as sexy, and just really make sure that we are making our clients feel good the entire time and making sure that they know that we aren't judging them in any way, shape, or form, and they are in, I guess, like, quote unquote, a safe space. And then after that, I guess, like, you know, this might be a little bit outside of the scope of this podcast when we want to talk about, but just make sure that you are training them with you're progressing their movements in evidence-based ways, and that you know how to actually, you know, teach them how to perform these movements that they want to get good at, the movements that you want to be good at, and also being able to work with them to put together a training protocol that meets both what you want to do with them, what you know is best for them, as well as their liking. And I think that one of the big ways that people in this industry kind of get carried away is they'll train individuals with diabetes or obesity as if they were a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And I've seen like literally deny these individuals of cardio and be like, no, cardio is stupid. And it's like, no, cardio can be, aerobic training can be very beneficial if someone is trying to lose weight and just overall improve their activity level.
Yeah. Did you make a post about that the other day? You talked about it the other day at some point, I think. No, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I made a post about that because, like, this is going to get on a little bit of a tangent, but I mean, people are probably aware
that's what I'm here for.
That, you know, there's some research on the Hadza population. This is the last hunter-gatherer population. And essentially what they did is they followed these people through accelerometers and they tracked their activity and their food. And then they used double-leveled water to track how much energy they expended. And essentially they found that these people who were hunter-gatherers in the Hadza population didn't expend more energy than an average person living in a Western society. So this was used to make the argument that, well, there is an energy constraint hypothesis where humans can only expend so much energy, and if we do more activity than this, our bodies are just going to regulate. So to this, I made a couple of arguments saying that, okay, well, first of all, actually, hold on. I'll give some more information. And people use this to say, okay, well, cardio is bad because if we do cardio, we're just going to compensate for it. Therefore, the way to expend energy and not cause compensation is to just take like 1 million steps per day. I'm exaggerating, but most people take like 10 to 20,000 steps a day because they're like, oh, this is neat, bro. This is not going to cause any type of energy compensation. If we look at the Hadza population, 95% of their energy expenditure comes from walking. First of all, they spend a very short period of time running. Because, like, if you're a hunter-gatherer, like, why would you run? Like, the only if
you run to chase a fucking predator or something.
Exactly. Like, the only time you're running is if you're running away from something or you're running towards something. People walk for like 12 hours a day. And people are making the argument that no, their energy compensation is to cardio. And it's like, no, like, this doesn't work like you see in the movies where there are a bunch of people with a bunch of spears like running around. Like, they're smart. They know that if they do that, they're going to get tired. You know, they are smart individuals. They are going to walk for the majority of the day because that's what's convenient for them. So first of all, there's that. Second of all, these people live in a society where if you are a hunter-gatherer, if you are a male and you are a hunter-gatherer, you can go out and then you hunt something or you get whatever is needed for the day and you come back. And you know what? Now you earned your right to just chill and lay down and have people bring you food and basically just celebrate you for being an alpha male and you fulfill your role for the day. You can realistically compensate for energy. We can't do that. Like, if I go to the gym and I run for 2 hours, I can't just say, hey, I'm not coming to work because I ran for 2 hours and I'm an alpha male. Like, you are fired, sir. We don't realistically have the ability to compensate for energy in the same way that the Hadza population do. So there's that. And also, the research that I shared with people is research in which they actually did test. My point was that we need to test energy compensation in Western civilizations, in people who have similar lifestyles to us. So there was a study done, and essentially what they did is they gave individuals either 1,500 calories of activity to do per week or 3,000 activities of calorie to do per week. And they found that the 1,500 calorie group compensated quite a bit to the energy expenditure. In the end, they were only in about a 500 calorie deficit throughout the week. So they compensated for 1,000 calories worth of energy. Then there was a group that performed 3,000 calories of activity per week, and they were actually in a 2,000 calorie deficit for the week. So even though the cardio only doubled, the calorie deficit actually quadrupled, right? So this shows us that there is likely a threshold for how much energy we can compensate to. There is probably a kind of cap where we don't actually compensate for energy in a linear and proportional manner to how much energy is expended.
And that compensation would primarily be coming through need?
It would be coming through, it'd be coming through need, it'd be coming through food. So they also track food to see how do we actually regulate our food consumption. Because we can't just give people the same diet, control their nutrition. Like in a good study, yes, we would control their nutrition and see what happens with energy, but they kind of want to make this more practical application. Like we have to just let them eat whatever they want, let them move however much they want, just to see what happens when we get 1,500 calories versus 3,000 calories. And they found that, sure, there was some compensation through less movement and through more food, but at the end of the day, one group was the 1,500 calorie group was only in a 500 calorie deficit. The 3,000 calorie group was in a 2,000 calorie deficit. So this shows us that the compensation to energy expenditure is not proportional to how much energy was expended. So I made the argument that if we're looking at Western civilizations, cardio is beneficial. Like you can't just say cardio isn't beneficial because there is going to be a compensation to it. And some people made the argument that, well, like why wouldn't you just reduce calories? Like if you wanted them to lose weight, why wouldn't we just reduce calories? Like that's a lot of activity to do. And to that, I would say that I think that a reduction in calories, and that when we really start to get more aggressive with nutrition protocols, that is more psychologically taxing on the individual than activity. I think that the majority of people would rather perform 3,000 calories of cardio or 3,000 calories of activity per week rather than have to reduce 2,000 calories per week from their nutrition. I think that one of them really just kind of gets to the individual a lot more psychologically, and has the individual be a lot more restrictive with food choices, and then the other one causes people to do more activity. So of course, again, it's probably highly individual which people prefer, but I think that the majority of people will take the activity rather than the nutrition. But I don't think it's a black or white answer. We can also do both.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think people commonly make the argument against cardio for a variety of reasons, and I think it's interesting to kind of explore. Like there's the whole weight thing, right? There's the whole using cardio as a tool to modulate weight, but then there's also just like the utility of cardio, because it's like, okay, what is like incredibly fucking easy to get someone to do? Cardio, like get them on a bike and they pedal on the bike. It's like it's crazy simple, and it's just like then trying to say that it doesn't have health benefits, like even regardless of weight, like saying it doesn't have health benefits, it's just like, okay, no, it's not quite true. It's not quite resistance training. It's not, I wouldn't say the adaptations are as useful or as powerful as resistance training, but it's pretty damn cool. It's like, it's still pretty damn powerful. And I think people often, I don't know, like it's rare that people program it in that much.
I think that the argument that cardio has no advantages over resistance training comes from just us being in a very bodybuilding centric perspective. Because, for example, aerobic training does have some neuroplastic changes and leads to some some changes in the brain that are actually exclusive to cardio and have not been found in resistance training. I think that if we're looking at like big cardiometabolic things, and sure, maybe they're exactly the same if we kind of match for weight. But I think that if we kind of look at the whole body system, we can't say that cardio has no isolated advantages to resistance training.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. I think it's something I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Like, for instance, structuring programs for people with diabetes. It's like, I love hypertrophy, but I have to realize like there's a benefit to doing something like cardio because it's really, really simple. And like maybe that's like that low intensity session where they just go in and they don't have to think about it. They just pedal. And it's like still has a lot of benefits. And I think that's important to note. And I think that's something I hope I can get a bigger grasp on in the future, because I find it so fascinating to think about how you go about programming for individuals with diseases, because it's like normal individuals without diseases or non-disease populations, general population, who still aren't in perfect health. It's like those normal people already find it hard to adhere. Populations with conditions, they find it incredibly hard to adhere. It's like they've got so many barriers in front of them. It's like really, really difficult. So it's just programming for them, I think, has to be more thought out. It has to be, or just as thought out, or something along those lines, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah. One thing I would like to touch on, and I'll see how much we can dive into this. One of the things I was thinking about sort of is, would you say, in terms of lifestyle interventions in general, like that includes nutrition, that includes hypertrophy, that includes cardio, et cetera, improving general ways that you can be a healthier human. Do you think those mainly play preventative roles in terms of lifestyle disease? I feel as though that would be the logical assumption. For instance, like diabetes, how is it caused? Bad lifestyle for the most part, type 2 diabetes. For the most part, bad lifestyle. For the most part, excessive energy, whether that's lack of energy flux out, whether that's just too much energy in, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think in general those mainly act as preventative mechanisms?
Yeah, I think so. I think that something that Lane Norton says all the time that I quite enjoy is that nutrition training and things like this aren't going to solve any disease that they didn't cause themselves. Yeah. And right now I'm speaking about fitness in general, but for example, if we look at like diabetes and specifically I'm talking about obesity caused diabetes, just to, then the semantics, that's caused by overnutrition, really. Like if we just kind of get into it, like I'm not going to talk about the whole like biopsychosocial model that might lead someone into that, or like the things that might
causes of the calorie increase.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's related to someone having way too much energy, storing it as fat, developing a large amount of visceral adiposity and the inflammation, blah blah blah, that might lead this individual to develop type 2 diabetes. So if we want to prevent that, then probably the best ways to do that are going to be through modulating both nutrition and training, getting this individual in a well thought out program that they're going to enjoy. And even if we don't modulate resistance training, we can probably significantly improve insulin sensitivity simply even if we don't modulate nutrition, if we just get them to resistance training or to train in general, we can do quite some significant things to their insulin sensitivity and their ability to maybe fight off diabetes. I think that, there's a lot of talk about which percentage of body fat we're going to start to have dysregulated insulin sensitivity. And this is largely confounded by research where individuals either weren't training or they were completely bedridden. So for example, like literature that is often cited by like Lyle McDonald and whatever, actually where people, about 15% end up starting to get insulin insensitivity. It's actually done on bedridden individuals, like
Yeah.
literally most sedentary individuals there can be.
Mm.
We don't really have research to see what happens if we take active individuals and then they get higher body fat percentages and see if they actually start to get insulin, like dysregulated insulin at a certain point.
Yeah.
Of course, at a certain point, like you can't be like 400 pounds and have perfect insulin. Although there are some like metabolically healthy obese people, I wouldn't count that that's you. But anyways, my train of thought here is that if we can improve your activity level, if we can improve your fitness, then nutrition and training are probably some of the best preventative measures that we can use. And if completely neglected, they might actually lead to some things that aren't quite so nice, like type 2 diabetes, and again, weight-related type 2 diabetes. But they probably aren't going to solve anything that they didn't inherently cause.
Yeah, like if the problem was
cancer.
Yeah. Like,
and this is something that I often argue with people because I have my bachelor's degree in nutritional science. Like, it's nutritional biochemistry, but it was within nutritional science. And it's often preached that food is medicine.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah. It really, really is not. Food is something that can help to prevent diseases, but medicine is medicine. If someone has cancer or ALS or Hodgkin's lymphoma, they need real medicine. No matter what you do, no matter what nutrition protocol you implement to someone who has cancer, it's not going to solve it. I mean, there was like the famous story of, I can't remember what her name was, but it was a very famous vegan activist, and she was a raw vegan, right? And she would say to people, if you just eat a raw vegan diet, you're never going to get cancer. She got cancer, and she said, "I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm not going to let the doctors treat me. I'm going to beat cancer through my raw vegan diet." And she died.
Fucking hell.
And her friends and family and followers said she wasn't vegan enough. Like, there are the majority of diseases, the vast majority of diseases can't be solved through nutrition because food is not medicine. It can be preventative, and by making better food choices, you might be able to reduce your risk of certain cancers and certain diseases. But if you have them, they will not be solved by nutrition.
Yeah, fuck. I feel like I'm going to cry, to be honest.
Bro,
Jesus. I'm literally tearing up a little bit.
Dude, they literally said like she wasn't vegan enough, and it's like, she just died. Like really, your argument for her dying is that she cheated on her vegan diet? What is wrong with you?
Jesus fucking Christ. Sorry. No, I'm just the fucking... I like to eat a tissue, man.
Dude, I got medical stories for days, man.
Oh, God. It's so painful. I guess, like, this is why, I don't know, like, the conversation with Eric and Lyndon hit so hard, because it was like, we care so deeply about these topics. Like, fuck. It's like what you were talking about before. It's like, okay, food is not fucking medicine. Like, bad food causes shit that's not the same as good food fixes shit. That's not the fucking same. Like, it's like it's really important to understand the general idea that, like, okay, you can get your micronutrients and all that, but it doesn't fucking matter if you get extra. Like, you're not going to do something special. Like, it's not like if you get heaps and heaps of a certain micronutrient or mineral or whatever, it's like, there's no fucking magic. It's not like extra good for you. It's like, it's more like, it feels as though it's more a kind of like a bare minimum, and then you're cool. Like, bare minimum, control calories, you're good. Like, I feel like that's how it is. You maybe I'm incorrect there. Let me know if you think I'm incorrect, but it's like, you get a bare minimum or a certain range of how good to how bad, of vegetable intake, of general just good food. And then it's like, from there, it's just variety as well. It's like, from there, I kind of feel like you eating better and better and better food can't do that much. Like, macronutrients from there. And then maybe that's oversimplistic, but it's like, people it frustrates me when people focus on, oh, I need to decrease my salt intake and my refined sugar. I need to get my sugar down. But then it's like, okay, these people won't exercise They won't resistance train, which is fine. Like, you can do whatever form of exercise you like. But it's like, if you're just focusing on eating the best fucking food you can, but you're still obese, it's like, or like there's just more important things to focus on. It feels like minutia. It's like say if you don't resistance train whatever amount you need a week, or whatever. It's like you don't have an adequate frequency or volume or intensity, yet you're fucking around with exercise selection. It's like, the fuck? It's just, geez, man. It's like this. I feel like I shouldn't get so emotional when I talk about these things. I think it drives people away from actually listening to what I'm saying. So I apologize for that, listeners. But it's like, it's just like, fuck. Like, it's so frustrating. It's like it's like when I have conversations about diabetes. I don't want to keep mentioning who I'm fucking talking about here, but it's like when I have conversations and people fundamentally don't understand how they work. It's like, if you fundamentally misunderstand diabetes and then you're teaching that, the knowledge of diabetes, like, I think the actual causes of diabetes are relatively well understood, but they're not taught. It's like, how come at a university level we're talking about the role that carbohydrates play? It's like, and it's not really a correct portrayal. It's just like, fuck. It's just like, gee. And then as a field, it's like, treatment of these feels like you're just slapping a band-aid of all the not the causes. You're slapping a band-aid on the end stage things that happen. And yes, someone's already relatively well progressed. They've already gotten to a point. But it's like, how come the knowledge that individual practitioners have is like so little about nutrition? They don't understand the relatively small role that something like sugar actually plays. Like, it's just like, fuck. Like, I just don't get it. It's like, how the fuck can you treat people with diabetes and not understand as much as you possibly can about the disease? You should understand the causes. You should understand, if you can give advice, what advice should you give? It's like, I can't fathom it. I just don't understand it. It's like, okay, how could you just buy into the idea that it's not, that it has no preventative? I had someone say once, like, who's treated a bunch of people, they fucking said that they've never ever seen someone, they basically implied that it was impossible from someone to go back from pre-diabetes to and yes, it's remission, not reversal, but it's like, to go from pre-diabetes not to go into type 2 diabetes. They said they basically were implying, and to a large group of people, they were saying this, and it's like, they were implying that you could only go that way. It's like, what kind of fucking, like, that's just not the case. It's, I find it like incredibly frustrating, because it's like, we have a fucking tidal wave of this thing, you know? It's like, how can you be okay with being misinformed? I don't get it. I can't understand. And like, I don't know, when I talk like this, I don't think it's productive, but it's just, I can't help it. It's like, Jesus. It's like, fuck, man. I don't know. I don't fucking understand. Like, if you treat these diseases, how can you not want to understand everything about them? The fucking cause, the solution, the useful solutions, the somewhat optimal solutions, the solutions that have nothing to do with it. I cannot even fathom it.
I think in large part is people trying to find shortcuts to these things, because I haven't met anyone who says, you know what, I'm going to treat diabetes and I'm not going to learn the root cause of it. I don't think that people are fundamentally that immoral or evil. But I think that people look for shortcuts, whether they want to or not. You know, I'm sure that you're familiar with people who will want to become more educated in nutrition and will read wrong source after wrong source after wrong source. And like, you just don't know what to say to these people anymore, because it's like, okay, well, maybe you just need to read about this more, put a little bit of work in. Like, oh, I read Gary Topp's book. I read Evil Grain. I read Grain Brain. And it's like,
fuck. Yeah.
It's almost like they're seeking the easy way out. They're trying to understand these things, but they don't actually want to put in the brain power, or
Well, I
not
think
the
it's
brain
difficult
power,
to
I shouldn't
know
say.
that it's not that easy, though. I think it's
Yeah, it's
like
like I think that
I was tricked by Gary Taubes, but then I found like smarter individuals or more rational individuals.
that's the
Like
thing.
I
Is like
read
if
his book and
everyone
I was
that
convinced.
yeah, like if everyone that you're surrounding yourself with is preaching it, like how do you know that it's bad information, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone has been treating diabetes for the last 20 years and everyone around them has said that you can't go into like it can't be remissed, it can't regress, um, it's not it's non-modifiable, like this is just
Mm.
something that people just kind of genetically get. Like what within you says, okay, well, I need to go search for evidence because these people are wrong. And I think like that's where kind of fault lies with maybe within some types of or some places within the education system where people aren't exposed to different opinions, or with people not questioning things themselves. Like I remember when I was in school for nutritional science, we sure we got a bunch of things that were taught to us where it's just like this is objectively wrong,
Mm.
but myself as a curious person would just like go home and search it up and look at it and talk to other professors, and then kind of see what was actually being said
Mm.
that was right. So yeah, this might not answer your question in any way, shape, or
No,
form, but
it's
I
not even
don't
a
think that
question. It's more a statement. It's like it's a
yeah,
yeah.
I don't think that anyone actually makes a conscious choice of I'm not going to understand this thing and I'm going to try to
Yeah.
treat it.
No.
Maybe a few people do
I
now in the
think
online
people only
fitness
do
stage.
it. They don't, but I think even in themselves, they know it's not the case. They are. It's more what they talk about, what they think in their own head is different to what they say. In that case, but I think that's a small percentage of people. I think for the large part, I'd agree with you. I say most people want to understand the shit for the most part.
Or I
Like I
think
think,
most things they do, like even if they don't, like it
yeah,
might be like,
most,
I
yeah,
understand this. I'm not going to seek to understand it
unincluded.
more because I already do.
Yeah, no, and I've done that before as well. I thought I understood hypertrophy back to front, and then that thing we talked about off air, it's like that came up, and I was like, wow. To me, it was like, holy shit. There's things that I don't understand, and experts at the highest level disagree. So how the fuck could I even begin to think that I know everything about hypertrophy? I know like I'm scratching the bloody. So I reckon I know maybe 5% of what the most experts currently know. If the, maybe probably maybe higher, but it's like there's so many variables that go into these things, and it's just like to assume that you know something to such a high degree that you don't need to learn anything more about it or challenge your opinions is extremely audacious and egotistical. It's like, this is why I love ego as the enemy. Because it's like, and this is why I try and actively question the evidence-based scene. I try and actively question people. I don't have anyone looming over my podcast saying what I can and can't talk about. So I try to actively say like, have conversations that no one else is willing to have or no one else is allowed to have, or it goes against their interests. It's because to me, I don't have any fucking interests. Well, I don't have any agenda. It's because there's no money in this yet for me. It's like, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I can do whatever I want. There's no repercussions. I have a safety net. It's like, I have the privilege to say whatever I'd like in public, and I don't feel as though I'll have much repercussion, which is cool. And I think it's important to question the evidence-based scene and question people in the evidence-based scene, individuals, even if we assume they are purely altruistic or purely people hold them on a very high level and people you respect hold them on a high level. You still have to question them, because the more I've questioned, it's like the more things have become open and sort of realized like, oh shit, it's a variety of degrees of truth, but it's depends your read of the evidence, if that makes sense. I don't know if those are coherent or not.
Now, that's something that I constantly tell people is question everyone, even question me, and I think that's only fair that if I'm saying to everyone, you need to question everyone, like no matter who it is, about the information they're saying and trying to find the truth yourself. Inherently that means that no one is 100% right, not even myself. And like if someone wants to challenge me or someone wants to say, hey, Miguel, you're wrong for this and this, I'm always open to that. And I think that those are the conversations that are honestly the best.
Yeah, those are the ones where it's like, that's like, I've made it really, really clear to my clients. I've been like, I made a post about this. I think I made a story about this the other day. I was basically like, I need you to question me, because then that increases your ability to trust me, because it's like,
That's awesome.
I need your buy-in, and I need it to be known that you can question anything that I do under any circumstances. Like one of my clients the other day, he asked me a question about how I add volume over time and how I like to program it, why I do it. And I did like 10 minutes of a check-in video just explaining all of why I do it, how I do it, why I make specific decisions. I made the decisions in front of him at the time. And I hope it increased his sort of ability to be like, oh, wow, like he's not just pulling this shit out of his ass. It's like, it's important for that. And then he can go and question my sources, the things that I sort of cited as to why I think that was a useful method. And yeah, I think it's the most important thing is being able to question everyone at all times. And if you ever respond bad to someone questioning you, that immediately reduces the likelihood that someone will question you again, therefore reducing their trust in you. So it's like you have to question everything at all times. Be a skeptic. It's rational skepticism at its heart. And it's like, that is, it's as a coach, you have to be able to have people question you. As an educator, same thing. And be okay with it, and make sure people know that it's okay to question. And don't ever like belittle someone for questioning you. It's like the most deplorable thing, I would say. But yeah, I think everyone should make it abundantly clear to, especially the clients, that it doesn't matter what happens in like public and private are a whole different thing, but you have to make it really, really clear. In private, they can question you. In public, they can question you. Like, it has to be clear.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I kind of respect the most out of Menno Henselman's, the fact that he'll just like question everyone. Like pretty much seems to not matter who is behind a certain statement. Menno will question them and like make a rebuttal.
Yes. I fucking love that. I brought that up. I was literally editing a podcast with Lyndon last night, and he used that exact example as well. But yeah, I think he is sort of displayed himself as the epitome of like, I'm just going to question. I'm not going to make ad hominem attacks. I'm going to make rebuttals of your points, like aggressive rebuttals of your points without holding things back to be nice for business relationships. He just makes he's a pure rational skepticist, and it's so damn cool. Yeah. But so should we finish off this podcast? Yeah, I think this has been, I loved how we flowed into so different topics. I didn't even really refer to my kind of questions, which is cool. It just kind of flowed in its own direction, which is always, I like it a lot. It's always beautiful when podcasts do that. But Miguel, my lovely friend, where can people find you online? I believe you're not currently doing coaching, but do you have products? Where can people find your content, etc.?
So if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can go to @mblacutt. That is MBLACUTT. You can go to Arrive Stronger to find out more about me. And if you want to be part of the membership site there, where I put up information and videos and presentations, you can sign up there, as well as get information and coaching from Steve Hall, Pascal Flor, Ryan Solomon, Jess Dalish. I can't ever pronounce her name. Daligish, I think. And our recently added physical therapist, as well as Ryan Solomon. And if you want to read more about me, you can go to my website, miguelblacutt.com. That's how you can find me.
Yeah, and also I would like to say I am also on the Revive Stronger member site, and I can vouch for it very hard. Like, I've been enjoying a lot of the presentations there, and also I update all my progress personally on there as well. So like, if you want to follow me as well, you can follow me on the Revive Stronger member site, which is cool. And it's like $6 a month or some shit.
$6.99 pounds a month.
It's like, and like, seriously, they have like presentations from like all the evidence-based people. It's dope as fuck. Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's by far the best member site. So I'd just like to interrupt real quick just to let you guys know about what we do here at Hypertrophy Hub. So Hypertrophy Hub is the company made by myself. Basically, the main thing that I'm doing here is I do online coaching, I create podcasts and other content. So you can find me through Instagram. That's a great way to consume all my free content, all my infographics, stuff like that. That's what I do. I try and do a lot of educating or teaching. Maybe it's a bit presumptuous to call it education. But the main thing that I'm trying to push here is I'm trying to push my online coaching. So I'm basically trying to fill up my client roster so I can one, get more experience, but I just want to coach people. I want this to be my job. I think it's quite obvious how passionate I am about this stuff. I don't charge as much as other coaches, primarily because I don't have the experience. And the way I get the experience is by getting more clients. So if any of you would like to be coached by me, I am quite confident in my abilities now. Over the last 6 months that I've been coaching, I have learned a ridiculous amount. So if you are looking for coaching, you can hit the link in my bio on @hypertrophyhub on Instagram, or you can check out the link in the show notes.